Hello and welcome back to my channel. Another story today to give you guys an idea of what it's like to be a healer and also what it's like to receive healings, because every experience is very different. So I thought I'd do a bit of a contrast to the last video because the gentleman I worked on that I mentioned in the last video didn't really have a lot of emotional response or any big jolts in his body. He just lay there, felt like energy was being released, and there wasn't really much drama about it, despite it being such a big success. So I thought I'd give an example of how it can be quite dramatic sometimes quite a big emotional release. So this particular lady I worked on, again, was before I became a full-time healer. I was still working full-time as an osteopath and doing healing on the side. And the group that I did the healing course with, the auric-magnetic healing course that I mentioned last time, we decided to stick together and learn from each other. So we would actually meet up once every month in New Zealand at one of the person's homes, just to work on each other and just practice and get better at healing. And eventually we started opening up sessions for the public as well. So we rented a village hall right next to the beach in Christchurch in New Zealand, and we do that once a month. And whatever healers were free that day, we just turn up with our tables and set up our tables in the village hall, and we'd invite the public in. And it was just a donation-based thing where people would just give us some money if they could afford it and what they felt like it was worth. And yeah, we just practiced our healings on people, and lots of really good things happened. And this is where this particular healing with this particular lady happened. I did meet her first through my osteopathy, so she used to come and have craniosacral therapy with me, and felt that helped with her neck, because her neck was the main problem. And also she had had a few auric-magnetic healings from me in the past as well, releasing energies throughout her body, including the neck in the past, where she would say, she'd feel better, but nothing really big or dramatic really happened in those first few sessions. So in this particular session, she expressed that she'd like to go deeper into her neck and really try and resolve whatever it was causing her neck to be really stiff. Not just physically, but she said she felt very energetically stiff in her neck. And she would physically get aches there quite often. So yeah, typical with the auric-magnetic healing, I'd start at the feet, work my way up, find what I would find in different places, and I just spent a little bit extra time in the neck. And from previous sessions with this particular lady, very aware of what I was doing to her aura. And quite often when I would find an energy that's a bit denser and pick it up and throw it away, she'd be the sort of person that would jolt. And sometimes when I would lift up an energy, her physical body would lift off the couch when I did that. Not everyone's like that. Not everyone feels the energy quite so well. So, and even when people do feel the energy quite well, they don't necessarily lift off the table like with this particular lady. But that's what she was like. It really felt like I was pulling something from her, and it was enough to lift her from the table. So anyway, I went on to the neck. And at this time, I was starting to play around with my imagination and imagining the neck and imagining where the block might be in the neck. And so in combination with my hands, I would feel where the block was and see if it mirrored up with what I saw in my head. And I remember picking up this particularly dense energy that I felt was coming from the inside of her neck vertebrae. And I just picked it up, and she arched back quite a bit. She's lying on her back, by the way, so even though I'm working on neck. She's actually lying on her back, so I was working from the front. So yeah, as I was picking up, she was sort of arching away. It was, felt quite dense, so it took a little bit more concentration to make sure I was holding on to this energy and pulling away from the body until it released and I threw it away. And at that point, she jolted really bigly from, a big jolt from the table, and also let out a big sigh and a wail afterwards, kind of like a, oh. And it seemed to be a really big shock to her. And she started crying, and as if something big had been shifted from her. And her husband was there at the time, so he, was there next to her and held her hand. But there was a lot of crying, a lot of release, a lot of emotional release at the same time as whatever it was, the energy that I pulled away. So she took some time to settle down. I just gently finished the rest of the session without going too deep with anything, just to, calm things down. And she lay there for some time on the table afterwards as well, just to relax and calm down and come back into her body, because it seemed to be a real big shock to her. And when she finally got up, she was very fatigued, and sort of tired, but she did say thank you, and she felt like something big had been released. And in her partner's arms, they gently walked away out of the village hall. And yeah, next time I saw her, she said, it took her another day or so for things to settle down in her neck afterwards, because it was such a big shock to her energy field and to her, consciously. But she said, her neck did feel freer after that point. It wasn't so stiff. It felt like there was more movement, less ache. And later on again, when I saw her yet again, there was more a sense of her being more herself, like she was expressing herself more, which made sense later on because I started to understand what different parts of the body meant, how they relate to different emotions, different beliefs, different expressions. And the neck is very much related to how much power you believe you have in terms of expressing yourself truthfully, expressing yourself as you wish to be. Not just verbally, but expressing in all forms, movement, what you do, So, quite a strong reaction to that one. A lot of emotion, a lot of crying, a bit of a wail. Very, very different to the previous session where, despite me feeling like there was quite strong things coming out, there was no real crying, there was no emotional release, there was no jolting. I hope that gives you a bit of a different view of how a healing can go. Also, it does highlight what we call healing crises. So sometimes when you release something quite strong, it's been holding people back a lot of energy starts to flow into areas that the person is not used to. And so someone can feel actually worse straight after a session, even though it's been very healing. And that can last, minutes, hours, days, sometimes weeks, where people actually feel a little bit worse because there's so much more energy flowing, there's more things coming up to clear. So this is also a nice example of what we call a healing crisis. No different to, if you've been to a massage therapist and you've got a really tight muscle, then they massage into it and it's uncomfortable. And it can quite often feel uncomfortable afterwards as well, after the massage, or your body feels very fatigued for a day or two afterwards. Yeah, it's a very similar thing to that. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this second story. There's plenty more stories to come. If there's any particular things you'd like me to talk about, then, put a message down below or email me. And please do like and subscribe if you'd like to support this channel. And I will see you in the next video.